When mortising, we use a mortise chisel. This is a lot thicker than the former chisel, as it goes under a lot more strain and stress as you hit it with a mallet. When we're using the mortise chisel, it is very important to ensure that we keep the chisel 90 degrees to the surface in which we are mortising. This ensures that we create perfect mortise using the correct methods and principles in which are going to be discussed through the video. As you can see, we have the marking lines made at 90 degrees to the face side and face edge, and this is why we chisel 90 degrees to the surface. When setting the piece for mortising, it is very important that we securely position the piece nice and tightly on the bench with a chopping board and a clamp with a waste piece of material underneath the clamp. When we begin to make the mortise, we mortise 2 mil away from our shoulder line. As the chisel pushes back once it hits the material, as the material pushes the grinding angle further into the material and pushing the shoulder line back a couple of mil. As you can see, I chiseled 2 mil off the line and I pushed it back a fraction. Now I'm going to mortise with the chisel on the line. When I hit it with the mallet, you can see that the chisel pushes back and goes past our shoulder line, as we can see in the video now. It goes back roughly a mil past our shoulder line, which causes an inaccurate and unprecise mortise from the very beginning. This is why we mortise 2 mil from the shoulder line to ensure we create an accurate and nice mortise. Once we have the shoulder line created, we can begin to work into the middle, ensuring that our chisel is always perpendicular to the surface in which we are mortising. It's very important to take your time and don't try to force the chisel too far down into the material, as you're just compressing the fibres and making it a lot harder to remove. This is why it's important to use 2 or 3 strokes of the mallet to ensure that you're chopping the fibres and removing the material. As you can see, I'm keeping the base of the chisel facing back towards the shoulder line, working my way into the middle. This ensures that we're removing the material accurately, pushing the material backwards. Once we get into the middle, we turn the chisel the opposite direction to ensure that we're using the base of the chisel working backwards to ensure we create a nice, accurate, precise mortise. We begin to work from the shoulder line back into the centre, as we always have material to be removed and don't leave ourselves with a shoulder line of less than a mil to be removed, as it will be a lot harder to remove with the mallet. So what happens if you don't turn the chisel around? As you can see, I'm using the chisel using the grinding angle facing towards my shoulder line. It's driving the chisel back into the material in which we removed, creating an angle in our piece. Once we get closer to the shoulder line, the chisel begins to curve the surface at the shoulder line. When we remove the clamp and look at the piece, we can see that we're gone past our shoulder line and it creates a ramp shape at the shoulder line, which is an inaccurate and not precise mortise, as it is not perpendicular to our surface in which we are trying to mortise. This is why we keep the base of the chisel facing backwards towards the shoulder line to ensure we create a nice flush shoulder line. This process can be continued throughout the mortising, ensuring that you're keeping the chisel perfectly 90 degrees to the surface and also taking your time when mortising. Once we have one side created, we turn the piece over and begin to mortise from the opposite side. This prevents the material from chipping out as we push the chisel into the fibres, which could cause the back of the mortise to begin to split. This will be demonstrated and discussed more further in the video. It is very important to ensure that when we're clamping the piece, we always position a waste piece of material underneath the clamp to prevent the material from getting damaged. As you can see in the video, I'm clamping straight down on the piece without a waste piece of material. And when we look at our piece of material, you can see that there's scratch lines and there's also a small bit of a dent from the clamp. This is why it's important to always protect the material. The principles are the exact same, working from the opposite side, ensuring that we're keeping chisel's base perfectly parallel to our shoulder lines. As you can see, once we continue these principles, we begin to create an accurate and precise mortise as shown in the video. So why do we mortise across the grain? As you can see, we want to remove a small little mortise on the top of this piece, and we can see that the grain is running parallel to the surface. When we're mortising, we use the same principles as previously talked about in the video, ensuring that we're keeping the back of the chisel always parallel to the shoulder line in which we're working to. This provides an accurate 90-degree angle and cut when mortising. As you can see, we're using the chisel across the grain, using a lot of force to cut the fibres of the material when using the mallet. As you can see, I hit the chisel 2 strikes with the mallet, and now when we try to mortise with the grain, with 1 strike of the mallet, we split the piece of material. This is because we're working with the grain, and it is a lot weaker than when we work against the grain. And as you can see, we split the piece of material as we were working in the wrong direction. This is a very important principle when mortising, and is always important to use this principle to ensure that we make a nice, precise and accurate mortise when creating a project. Why do we turn the piece around and work from both sides when mortising? In this demonstration, I'm going to mortise all the way down, but still using the same key principles as previously talked about. Ensure that we keep the mortise chisel perfectly 90 degrees to ensure that our mortise is perfectly 90 degrees to the surface of which we're creating. This is very important when creating the mortise, as it creates an accurate and precise mortise all the way through and prevents the back from splitting out. Here I'm still mortising all the way through the material, taking my time and working against the grain continuously. We can remove the waste material with a ruler just to ensure that we're creating a clean cut each time. Now, after working all the way through the mortise, we can see that the back of the mortise has split out and pushed the fibres of the material through our shoulder lines, which created a bad mortise which is inaccurate and unprecise. With a small bit more pressure pushed on the fibres, we can see that they begin to break away from our material and go past our marking lines, and leaving a very rough and unfinished mortise. This is very unattractive when creating a project, and it's very important to always work from both sides to ensure that your project is perfect the way you want it, and all the joints are perfectly accurate and precise, ensuring that we use the key principles all the time. This is why it's important to mortise from both sides of the material.